There is something deeply stupid about giving 3 of the most advanced AI models on the planet the same task and asking them to make a Naruto Roblox game, because at some point you stop wondering which AI is smarter and start wondering which one is going to accidentally create the digital equivalent of a gas station bathroom. Today we have Chat GPT, Claude and Grock, and the challenge is simple. Make the best anime Naruto-inspired Roblox game possible. Not a presentation, not a list of ideas, not some motivational speech about how their game is going to change the industry. An actual Roblox game. Something a human being could load up, run around in, fight enemies in, level up, and hopefully not stare at for 5 seconds before uninstalling Roblox out of self-preservation. And because apparently I have decided my free time has no value, I am going to judge all 3 of them. The rules are pretty straightforward. Each AI gets the same basic challenge. Build an anime ninja game inspired by Naruto. It needs combat, abilities, progression, enemies, a proper map, some sort of boss or objective, and enough personality to make the thing feel like an actual game, instead of a collection of coloured blocks held together by prayer. The first contestant is Chat GPT. Chat GPT enters this competition with the confidence of someone who has already written approximately 14,000 lines of lure before I even finish explaining the challenge. I give it the prompt, and immediately it starts throwing out systems like combat mechanics, chakra abilities, NPCs, quests, leveling, UI, cooldowns, and an entire development structure. This is where Chat GPT becomes dangerous. Ask it to make a game and it doesn't seem to understand the concept of moderation. It hears, make a Roblox game, and thinks, excellent, let's construct civilization. I tell it I want a Naruto-inspired ninja village, some enemies, abilities, progression, and a boss fight, and the response is basically a software engineering thesis wearing a Roblox shirt. The first thing I notice is that ChatGPT is extremely good at organizing the project. Instead of dumping one enormous script into Roblox Studio and hoping the computer develops consciousness, it starts separating things into modules. Combat goes somewhere. Abilities go somewhere else. NPC behavior gets its own system. Remote events handle communication. Server-side logic handles the important stuff. Client-side logic handles the flashy nonsense. This is exactly what you want if you're building something larger than a 5-minute Roblox experiment. Then we get to the actual game. The village starts taking shape. There are buildings, training areas, enemies, quests, and an arena. The player gets a basic melee system, chakra-style abilities, and progression. Suddenly, I'm looking at something that resembles an actual game instead of a coding tutorial. But there is a problem. ChatGPT has a tendency to give you an enormous amount of infrastructure before you get the fun part. You ask for a cool fireball and receive a lecture about server validation, replication, cooldown management, remote events, object architecture, and the philosophical implications of client authority. I appreciate the engineering, but brother, I asked you to make Naruto punch a dude. At some point I need the dude to get punched. Still, once everything is connected, the result is surprisingly solid. The combat has a basic rhythm. You attack, use abilities, dodge, manage cooldowns, fight enemies, gain experience, and move through the world. It's not some billion-dollar anime MMORPG, but the bones are there. Then I move over to Claude. Claude gets the same challenge, and immediately I notice a different personality in the way it approaches the problem. Claude feels less interested in building an entire corporate software architecture, and more interested in making sure the game actually feels coherent. It starts thinking about the player's experience. What happens when the player spawns? What do they see? What is the first objective? Why should they fight the enemies? What happens after the fight? This matters because a game isn't impressive because the code contains 900 functions named after things nobody remembers. A game is impressive when you press play and immediately understand what you're supposed to do. Claude leans heavily into that. It starts creating a progression loop where the player begins as a rookie ninja, completes missions, fights enemies, earns experience, unlocks abilities, and eventually faces a powerful boss. And this is where Claude starts cooking. The world feels more intentional. There are training areas, there are quest NPCs, there are enemy camps, there is a sense that the player has somewhere to go. The biggest difference is that Claude seems more willing to keep things manageable. Instead of trying to create every possible system known to humanity, it focuses on a smaller number of mechanics and makes them work together. That's a good strategy because Roblox development has a funny habit of punishing ambition. You start with, I'm going to make an anime game, and 3 hours later you're debugging a combat system because the enemy AI has decided walking backward into a tree is its ultimate fighting technique. Claude avoids some of that chaos by keeping the design tighter. The combat starts simple. Basic attacks, abilities, enemy reactions, cooldowns, and effects. Then the progression gets layered on top. You defeat enemies, gain XP, level up, unlock stronger abilities, and eventually take on the boss. And honestly, this is where Claude began making ChatGPT nervous. The game isn't necessarily more technically complex, but it feels more like a game. The map has a purpose. The enemies have a purpose. The progression has a purpose. Everything is connected to the player's next objective. Then there is Grock. Grock enters the competition with the energy of somebody who would look at the other 2 contestants and say, that's cute. I give Grock the exact same challenge and immediately the tone changes. The design starts leaning harder into spectacle. More visual effects, more dramatic abilities, more ridiculous attacks, more anime energy. This is the contestant that looks at a basic fireball and says, what if the fireball was the size of a refrigerator and exploded 3 times? And honestly, I respect it. Grock understands something important about Roblox anime games. People love absurd visual feedback. You press a button and something needs to happen on screen that makes your brain briefly forget you have responsibilities. The abilities start becoming much more dramatic. You get giant energy attacks, dash effects, area attacks, Clones, transformations, and boss abilities designed to make the screen look like the final 5 minutes of an anime movie. There is a certain charm to it. Grok isn't trying to make a spreadsheet with a combat system attached. It's trying to make you feel powerful. And that's exactly what an anime game needs. But then the problems start appearing. Because when you tell an AI to make something visually impressive, there is always a chance it develops the artistic restraint of a 13-year-old who just discovered bloom effects. Suddenly, everything glows. The attacks glow. The enemies glow. The player glows. The floor is glowing for reasons I don't understand. At one point, I feel like I'm fighting an enemy inside a nuclear reactor. It looks cool for about 12 seconds, and then I realize I have no idea what is happening. This is where Chat GPT's structure and Claude's restraint start becoming valuable. Grok has the spectacle, but spectacle without clarity turns combat into visual soup. Still, the boss fight is where Grok gets its revenge. The boss actually feels threatening. It has multiple attacks, phases, movement, and enough health to make you question whether you accidentally started a second job. The arena becomes chaotic. Projectiles are flying everywhere. The boss is teleporting around. The player is dashing across the map. Explosions are happening. My computer is looking at me like I personally betrayed it. And for a moment, I'm not judging an AI-generated Roblox project anymore. I'm playing a game. That is the moment this challenge gets interesting. Because now we have 3 different approaches. ChatGPT is the engineer, Claude is the designer, Grok is the showman. ChatGPT wants the systems to be structured. Claude wants the player experience to make sense. Grok wants you to scream when you unlock the ultimate ability. So now I need to actually test them. First category, combat. ChatGPT's combat is reliable. It has a good foundation, and the server-side structure gives it room to expand. But the attacks feel somewhat basic. Claude's combat feels smoother because the systems are focused. The abilities have clearer purposes. Grok's combat is the most visually ridiculous, which is exactly what I expected. When you activate the ultimate, the screen basically files a noise complaint against itself. For raw spectacle, Grok takes this round. For structure, ChatGPT wins. For overall feel, Claude is right in the middle. Next category, world design. ChatGPT creates a functional village with different areas and NPCs. Claude creates a world with clearer progression and objectives. Grok makes a world that looks more dramatic, but occasionally feels like several cool ideas were thrown into a blender. Claude takes this one. The map actually feels like a place where a player is supposed to spend time. Then we have progression. This is where ChatGPT starts flexing. Levels, experience, abilities, enemy difficulty, quests, rewards, and future expansion all fit into a structure that makes sense. You could keep adding content without rebuilding the entire game. Claude also does well here, especially because the progression loop feels understandable. Grok focuses more on immediate power and spectacle. You level up, get stronger abilities, and destroy increasingly ridiculous enemies. It's fun, but it doesn't have the same depth. ChatGPT takes the progression round. Then we reach the most important category, fun. Because none of this matters if the game feels like unpaid overtime. I load each version up and start playing. ChatGPT feels like the most complete prototype. Claude feels like the most polished prototype. Grok feels like the prototype most likely to make you yell, "What was that?" after pressing one button. And somehow, all 3 have something the others don't. ChatGPT gives me confidence that the game could become huge. Claude gives me confidence that people would understand how to play it. Grok gives me confidence that somebody is going to upload a video titled, "I became the strongest ninja in Roblox," and somehow get 4 million views. But now comes the final boss. We need to ask which game would actually have the best chance of becoming a successful Roblox anime game if these prototypes were developed further. And this is where the answer gets complicated. ChatGPT has the strongest foundation for a serious long-term project. Its approach makes expansion easier. New clans, abilities, enemies, maps, quests, bosses, progression systems, and multiplayer mechanics could all slot into the architecture. Claude has the strongest overall design philosophy. Its version feels easier to understand and more focused on the player. Grok has the strongest entertainment factor. Its abilities make the game immediately recognizable as an anime power fantasy. If I had to build a full game from one of them, I'd probably steal from all 3. Take ChatGPT's architecture, take Claude's progression design, take Grok's combat spectacle, then throw them into one Roblox studio project and pray the server doesn't spontaneously combust. But we need a winner. And after testing everything, I think the winner is Claude. Not because Claude has the most code. Not because the game has the biggest explosions. Not because it somehow created the next Roblox billion-dollar empire in 20 minutes. Claude wins because the game feels the most intentionally designed. You know where to go. You know what you're doing. You understand why you're fighting. The progression has direction. The combat has purpose. The world supports the gameplay instead of existing as decorative furniture. ChatGPT comes incredibly close, and honestly, for developers who care about building a large, scalable project, ChatGPT might be the strongest foundation. Grok is the wild card. If the challenge was make the most ridiculous anime Roblox game possible, Grok would have a serious argument for first place. But for this specific challenge, Claude takes the crown. And the funniest part is that none of these models actually needed to know how to be a ninja. They needed to understand game design. That's the real test here. Anybody can generate a fireball. The hard part is deciding why the player wants the fireball, what happens after they use it, how the enemy responds, how the player gets stronger, and what makes them want to keep playing after the first 10 minutes. That's where the difference between generating code and designing a game becomes painfully obvious. So the final scoreboard is Claude in first, ChatGPT in second, and Grok in third. Claude gets the overall win. ChatGPT gets the award for building the most expandable foundation. Grok gets the award for making my graphics card reconsider its career choices. And honestly, this entire challenge has left me with one uncomfortable thought. If these three models keep getting better at making games, Roblox developers are going to have an increasingly strange future. Because right now, you still need a human to take the generated pieces, test them, fix them, balance them, design around them, and turn them into something people actually want to play. But the gap is getting smaller. Today we're asking an AI to make a Naruto-inspired Roblox game. Tomorrow somebody's going to ask one to build the entire thing, including the economy, combat, quests, map, NPCs, animations, UI, matchmaking and monetization. And somewhere in the distance, a Roblox developer is staring at their 400-line combat script, wondering why they spent 6 hours fixing a hitbox when an AI just generated one in 30 seconds. That's the real boss fight. Not Chat GPT versus Claude versus Grock. It's whether any of us are ready for a future where the hardest part of making a game isn't writing the code anymore. It's having a good enough idea to tell the machine what to build.